His ultimate purpose was to serve man in some way, shape, or form, be it prosperity or some other degree. Or there are even a lot of sex gods. And many people who identify themselves as Christians even try to use the real God in order to serve themselves. Like say they'll only worship Him when He's blessing them. And again, if I only love God when He's doing something for me, I'm not really worshiping Him in spirit and in truth. I more or less consider Him to be some kind of cosmic vending machine. You know, I put my money in, I tell God what I want, and then I expect Him to give it to me. Because we made a transaction instead of having a real relationship. And finally, we're going to define self-deification. So what is it? Self-deification is basically choosing self over God. And when you do that, you're actually making a god out of yourself. This is where idolatry is actually rooted in self-deification, because those idols that you make and serve are really serving you. And if we're ultimately out to please ourselves, for our own happiness, we consider ourselves to be some sort of god. So again, and this is one of the main points, self-deification is basically choosing self over God. Now, Adam and Eve did this. In the Garden of Eden, when they bit the apple, they chose self over God. They chose each other even over God. And do you know who else did this? Anybody think of any other biblical figure that might have done this? What? Satan. So it's a big deal, And another truth that we got to point out here, if we're really honest, is we choose ourselves over God all the time. But lucky for us that Christ is our Savior. He saves us not only from our sin, but also from ourselves. Again, self-deification, when we're only out to satisfy ourselves with different idols that we make instead of with God, what does that really say about us? It says that we've chosen to become the gods of our own lives, right? Rejecting God. And that really means that we worship ourselves before the real God. And He's got every right to be offended at that. And we couldn't be more guilty of it. When Adam and Eve bit that apple, they ultimately denied God, making themselves out to be more worthy of their own praise. Now, I do this all the time. I don't know if it's true for you guys too, but Adam and Eve chose themselves over God. I want you to think about it. How many times a day, not even in your lifetime, but how many times a day do you find yourself choosing to please yourself or do something that serves you instead of serving God? I mean, speaking from my own experience, I just spent a good chunk of last week, while I should have been writing this lesson, playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City. You guys know what I'm talking about, and that's kind of an ironic title. Right, ha ha ha, you got it. And it took me a while to realize, guys, that I wasn't really playing the game was playing me. So when it comes to idols, I know DJ can speak on this, video games it's like one of our main idols aside from whatever else. So now we're going to get back to the topic of relationships to see how these three sins, lust, idolatry, and self-deification, affect relationships. And the problem starts, guys, when we drag these sins into our relationships. They often become the basis of our dating lives, and our relationship with God. And if we become the God in our own eyes, naturally, we're going to be very self-serving. Now, I've got two models of relationship to show you. One of them you've already seen, the other one's new. So, for the sake of illustration, the triangle in the middle with the arrows will represent God. I didn't really have a lot of holy clip art. It was either God or a puppy, and dog spelled backwards is God, but that's too much of a stretch. All right. You're welcome.
You're calling God a dog?
No. See, people like George get confused, and that's why I didn't use dog. So here's model number one, a human-centered relationship. Now they could know about God, or they could leave God out of it completely. And this is a self-serving relationship. This is idolatry at work in a relationship. Here, Look at him go.
Whoa. Hold up. Whoa.
Here the couple runs around God in a circle, kind of trying to please him, without letting him into the relationship. I'm going to make him run around a little more. This is a lot of relationships today. They are, far more interested in pleasing themselves and how their relationship benefits them and makes them feel. And this is an example of what we talked about earlier, that concept of, I love the way you make me feel about myself, which is not real love. That's where the individuals involved are more interested in meeting their personal, physical, and emotional needs, rather than being in relationship with God and letting Him meet those needs, which is what He created us for. And rather than making partners out of each other, this is important to note, because it's like, you have the divorce rate in churches at an all-time high. It's like 50-something%, maybe over 50%. And also out of churches, divorce rates over 50%. Rather than making partners out of each other, they've turned each other into an object to serve their personal purposes. And an object that takes the place of God, that man uses to serve his personal purpose, is an idol. So they've effectively created idols out of each other. That sound messed up? I've done this before. The fact is, it's not love. That's not love. That's shopping. I find somebody that's meeting my needs that I'm going to use, and maybe they're not hot after 5 years. Sorry. What am I going to move on? Clearly I didn't love them. Clearly I was out for myself. And we see that in the divorce rate. We see that in high school. We see that in college. Oh, she's cuter than you. Or he's smarter than you. And people bounce from relationship to relationship, turning people into expendable products without any real value. And that just shows how far we've fallen from when God created man in Genesis in His own image. And I did this once in a relationship. I was dating this girl. Actually, for the first couple months, I was trying not to date this girl in college. Trying not to. I would explain, this is why we can't date. You're a new Christian. We would be unequally yoked. And I would be getting in your way of getting into a relationship with Christ. But eventually, my emotional needs that I hadn't brought before God crept up on me. And they got in, and I started dating this girl to fill my emotional need. I didn't love her, obviously. She was a real nice girl. I didn't love her. I was just meeting a need. And that was wrong to do to her. But here's kind of a diagram of what happened. Let's say this is the heart of a Christian. And at the center of their heart is the throne where Christ is seated. All right? I know, just use your imaginations. I know TV and video games have destroyed your imaginations, but try anyway. All right. So let's say this was that girl's heart. Christ was supposed to be sitting on the throne, but I kicked Christ off the throne in her heart and let her bask in the glory that was Travis, because I was filling her emotional needs that Christ was supposed to meet. I know I'm cute and all, but I'm no Jesus, all right? I am cute, Gabe.